Shabbat Shalom. This is Daniel John Lee with Torah Restoration Ministries. This is my weekly Sabbath Shabbat Shalom podcast, and the website is www.spiritandtorah.com. Today's Sabbath podcast is episode 32, Hebrews 8, What is a Covenant? Something that's very important to understand, and I think a lot of people misunderstand what a covenant is. And this causes a lot of people to misunderstand what our obligation is toward the covenant when they don't even understand what a covenant is. So we're going to turn to Hebrews 8, where it actually talks about the first covenant and the renewed covenant, which we are under now. And the entire chapter is very good. I encourage you to read it all. But we're going to start in verse 7. For if that first covenant, so we're referring to the covenant that was given on Mount Sinai to Moshe and the children of Israel. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will make a renewed covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith Yahweh. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Yahweh. I will put my Torah into their mind, and write my laws into their hearts, and I will be to them an Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. Verse 10. So, we find here some very incredible statements, and one of the ones I want to point out to begin here is the reason the first covenant was done away with and why place was found for a second is because, first of all, in verse 8 he says he found fault with them. That would be the children of Israel. And then he goes on to say in verse 9, they continue not in my covenant. So he found fault with them, they continue not in the covenant. So because of this, because he found fault with them, because by and large the children of Israel did not continue in the covenant, he had to create a new and better covenant. One in which hopefully the other party, his people, would actually walk in the covenant. And this new covenant, this renewed covenant, which is what was ratified by the spilling of blood from Yahshua, is what was prophesied in Ezekiel chapter 11, when he said, I will put my spirit into the hearts of my people, and my spirit will cause them to walk in my statutes, in my commandments, in my judgments. And this is why in verse 10, the renewed covenant, the second and better covenant. And why is it better? Because the people, his people, actually walk in it, unlike in the first covenant they did not. It says, I will put my Torah into their mind and write them in their hearts, just like Ezekiel 11 prophesied. I will put my spirit into them, and it will cause them to walk in my statutes and in my judgments and in my precepts. Okay, so we hear the error amongst Christianity today that the Torah has been done away with. It has been nailed to the cross. It is no longer a part of the covenant. But that is not what this is saying. What is a covenant? A covenant is often, I hear a lot of people misunderstand and say that the covenant is the Torah. No, the Torah is not a covenant. The Torah given to Moses, the laws and commandments given in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, is one component of a covenant. Well, if we look at the first covenant, there are 3 distinct components. There is Yahweh, there are the people of Israel, with whom Yahweh is entering into the covenant, and there is the Torah. These are the commandments and the precepts and the statutes that Yahweh is asking his people to walk in. If the people fulfill their end of the covenant and they walk on these statutes, then Yahweh will fulfill his end of the covenant and protect and bless his people. So the covenant is formed of 3 different components. The 2 parties that are entering into an agreement, and then the commandments, the statutes, and laws by which the 2 parties will agree that they will walk in. So we have Yahweh, that's component 1. We have the people of Israel, that's component 2. And we have the agreement, or the laws that they're going to enter into by covenant, and that is the Torah. Now, when we look at the renewed covenant that is established in the renewed testament, in the New Testament, in the Brit Hadashah, which is ratified by the spilling of the blood of Yahshua HaMashiach, by Jesus the Christ, we discover that the Torah is still an active component in the new covenant, in the renewed covenant. We still have Yahweh. He is a party in the new covenant, just as he was in the first covenant. We still have the Torah. The Torah are still the laws and commandments and statutes and precepts by which Yahweh will enter into this covenant with the second party. And who's the second party? Again, the second party is Israel and Judah. It's his people. However, this time, Israel and Judah will walk in these precepts because they will be filled with the gift of the Ruach HaKadosh, the Holy Spirit, which, as Ezekiel 11 prophesied, as was prophesied in Jeremiah 31, this Spirit will cause them to walk in his precepts and statutes and judgments out of a love for him. So it's amazing the similarities between the first covenant and the renewed covenant. Christians try to say that there's a big difference, that things have been done away with, that there's a huge now difference between what we see in the new and versus the old. But that's not what Hebrews 8 is saying at all. If anything, we see remarkable similarities. The only difference between the two covenants is, number one, in the new covenant, we now have Yahshua's blood. We don't just have the blood of bulls and goats looking forward to the Messiah's sacrifice, but we have Yahshua's blood that ratifies this covenant. And we understand that blood's a necessary component because even on Mount Sinai, Moshe took the blood of the animals and he sprinkled the book of the covenant and he sprinkled the people and himself. In the same way, we have the blood of Yahshua that sprinkles us and delivers us. But we have Yahweh in both covenants. We have his people, Israel and Judah, in both covenants. And we have the Torah in both covenants. We have all three of the same components in both of the covenants. The difference is that the blood of Yahshua is in the renewed covenant, which is why it's better. It's built on better promises. And the Holy Spirit is given en masse to his people. Whereas in the Tanakh, you saw here and there people who walked in the Spirit, such as Moshe, such as David, such as Yehoshua, son of Nun. But by and large, most were not filled with the Spirit and did not continue in the covenant, such as those who wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. They did not have the Spirit like their children would have after them. And so they fell in the desert. They displeased Yahweh. They did not mix the hearing of the word with faith. So this new covenant has better promises and has a better result because his people are filled with the Spirit. They do mix the truth that they hear with faith, and thus it produces fruit in their lives. So really, when you examine the wording of Hebrews chapter 8, there is not a huge difference in terms of the components that form the covenant between the first and the second covenants. The components really are the same. You still have the same two parties. You still have Yahweh and Israel and Judah, just as you had on Mount Sinai. You still have the Torah. And it says this. I don't know how Christians can overlook this, but it's so clear in verse 10. It says that this new covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh, I will put my Torah, or if you have a King James Bible, I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts. So whereas before the Torah was inscribed on tablets of stone, now he says, I'm going to inscribe them in their minds and hearts. And this is also predicted in Ezekiel 11, that he will give them hearts of flesh and will inscribe his commandments upon their tablets of flesh. So this was all prophesied in the Tanakh. It all comes to pass in the renewed covenant. And it boggles the mind that Christians can read Hebrews 8 and say the Torah has been done away with when it very specifically says in verse 10, Hebrews 8:10, that he will write the Torah into their minds and into their hearts. The Torah is not done away with. If anything, the Torah is made more essential and more important because it's no longer just put on tablets of stone. It's written on our very hearts and our minds. It is an essential part of an essential component of the covenant that we enter into with Yahshua, the King, because he has ratified this with his blood. And dare we trample on this covenant? No, we don't. So let us walk in the Torah. Let us walk in the renewed covenant, ratified by his blood, fulfilling the prophecy in Ezekiel that through his Spirit we can keep his commandments. Shabbat Shalom. Have a great week.